Okay, this is my second video on degradation. I tried one first and I think it was a disaster. Degradation, the reason degradation is important as an Excel issue is we have one of these kind of matrices. Now, that's okay if it's for 1 year, but imagine if these were months, and if these went over 300 months, and imagine if they went down 300 months, which is what we have in our, this is called the monthly consolidated model. It really has everything. This has 350 months. Now, one of the things, so we're going to do all this degradation with a user-defined function rather than one of these matrices, and it's going to be a pain. Okay, and I'm going to try to do it reasonably quickly. Okay, and I'm going to perhaps even make it in 2 steps. Now, this says the degradation is 0.7% over the life. Let's just see that. So if it's a 20-year life, we could put 1 plus 0.7 raised to the 25 years minus 1, and that gives us 19% degradation, so it's not very consistent. What really happens is sometimes the degradation is higher, people tell me, in the first year. So I'm going back to the assumptions page. Sorry if there's a little background noise. I'll talk about that later. In the assumptions, I put some degradation by year, and you noticed I used the year up here, and then I put some just as an example. I think these are not real. I think maybe the first year degradation is about 0.5, 0.7 maybe, and the rest are 0.4 or something like that. Okay, I wonder how much I understand there's some work on degradation. Now, since we have some months, we have months rather than years, all we have to do is take this and multiply it, and then we can adjust this annual degradation to make it 1 plus monthly degradation. So we're going to go down month by month instead of having a sudden step down, and 1 divided by 12, our famous number 12, number of months in a year. Okay, and so there's our input. There are our inputs. Now, let's first do this with a kind of matrix example. And we have age here, and then the degradation. Now, if we really wanted to be careful, the degradation should compound. So what it should do is it takes this one times 1 plus the last rate. Excuse me. That's our degradation. If we want the accumulated degradation, we would, just a minute. Okay, it should have been, we just, to get the accumulated degradation, we take this one, the last accumulated degradation, multiplied by 1 plus the current degradation minus 1. Okay, and then we shift control R. Now, because of this, actually I have the calculations set to off. I'll just calculate the sheet. This is just like pressing Shift F9. We could make a little button up there, but I guess this is going to be okay. Now, if we wanted to do this, and we have this amount of new capacity coming online, the step 1 to do one of these matrices, I suppose I can go all the way down here, is let's go to 2026. I suppose we should do that. The first thing to do is to note that you have the same number of rows and columns. Okay, I think I press Alt-EIS Enter. Okay, so we need to put the year. This is the vintage, so this is the year. I called it the year you're born, and then we put the transpose. Now it's very important, I think, to remember that, you know, think about really what you're doing with this, because we're going to replicate it with a function. Now, once you have this defined, this year, when you put the thing into service, then you're going to work through, after you do that, then you're going to work through the age of the project, F4 twice, minus F4 three times, plus 1. That's the age. Shift Control R, Shift Control D, and we calculate the sheet. Okay, so we have some negative age, some zero age, and this age will relate to the accumulated degradation. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have to split this degradation into a couple of videos. Okay, now once we did this, we can put a lookup function around there. Now I'm going to show you a little trick with the SUMIF function that somebody showed me a while ago, but let's say we have a 7-year life. I don't know why. And then we put our accumulated degradation in. Okay, and then we have our, we can even press Shift Control R, Shift Control P, Shift Control D. Okay, and I'm gonna calculate the sheet again. Okay, and then we see that we have this. Now if you would want to make sure it switches off, I suppose you could put zeros in here to make sure that we don't continue degrading, and there would be nothing wrong, I suppose, with just clicking on the entire column and row like that, except we'd have to press the F4 here and the F4 here. Okay, now imagine that you had this in the model. You'd have to do this each time. Not that big a deal, maybe. Okay, now we're not finished, because then to get the actual amount of the degradation, we have to multiply this by the amount of the capacity. Okay, and then I press Shift Control 1, Shift Control R, Shift Control down, Shift Control D, all that stuff. Okay, and then that's the amount of the degradation, and we really don't like all of this thing. We could put a SUMIF, and only SUMIF it's not NA. Okay, that's one way to do it. Okay, oops. Okay, so that's, but can you imagine how big the model would become if you had to put this in? Now, there are also issues with the portfolio of the project. You know, the price could change based on the age. Anything that changes, here's what you really need to think about. Anything that changes due to the age of the project, you're going to have a problem with. Okay, so what we're going to do in the next video is do the same thing, create a function. This one was called degradation by year, where we essentially do the same thing. Okay, this doesn't have the compounding in it, and it just, this function accepts the it accepts the degradation rate, the um, the capacity, and you have to put kind of the age of the capacity. So it accepts essentially uh, either this matrix or this matrix, and it accepts all of this stuff we put in. Okay, and we have to just go through the same thing, and at the very end we can put the degradation by year, or we can put, I made another function just that applies any kind of rate. Okay, so I'm going to let's see how we're doing on this video. Okay, I think I'm gonna stop this video and call it degradation without a function.